What up, y'all? It's Mutt. I'm the co-creator and artist for a comic book called HIRO, Blood of Patriots with my boy Macho Dan. It's a story about an undead super soldier in World War III. I think you're going to love that. If you'd like to know more about that, you can connect with me on Twitter at Mutt-Man75 or on Instagram at Mutt-Man Comics. Today I'm just inking a page. This page is showing a cool new thing for a character called Nina Kruppen. She is the sister of Dr. Leov Kruppen, who is one of the main characters in our story. Nina comes along on the mission here, and she's displaying a new and very cool ability with weaponry. So she makes this weird weapon that she's handing to our other character named Boone, who is a loyal friend and compatriot to Dr. Kruppen. We're doing a little bit of character development, and in this particular page, it's, uh, we have to do that kind of thing fast because we have 48 pages to tell a complete story. And so Nina's page, she has like 2 or 3 pages where we see her ability and see what she's capable of doing, and that's going to set her character up for the remainder of the story. So, check it out and I hope you dig it while I'm talking about the subject matter which I'd like to cover today. And that is about introducing comics to kids. One of the things that I'm sort of concerned about is that no one is really doing a good job making comic book stories for kids. One reason is because the hobby has transitioned to an older audience, and kids are not really the target audience anymore. And I think that's a real shame. I've got kids, and I have introduced my kids to comics, and they, for the most part, love comics and all have kind of a small, collection of their own. And I think that maybe there's some mistakes that people make when introducing their kids to comics, because most of the people who are into comics, especially older folks that have kids or parents that have kids that remember the joy of comics, remember the excitement of comics, and want to share that with their kids. Uh, a lot of times those people make the mistake of trying to find something new, and they don't believe that the comics that they loved as kids would translate well. So they go to the shop, the local comic shop, and they try to find some sort of like newer books which might, relate better to modern kids. And generally, uh, it could be different for everybody, but generally my experience with that has been that they don't really relate well. That comics today for children are more, at least the ones that are, from the most popular characters, are really more about translating a cartoon to a comic, which is different than how it used to be. Um, and it doesn't really get kids into the medium of comics, it doesn't seem. So what I've done is that I think is a little better is I've actually been okay with introducing the comic books that I love to my kids, not trying to figure out something new that they like. Just kind of let them just go through my collection, check out what I've got, and see what it is they like. The boys are always kind of into stories that relate to them a little bit more, and the girls are into stories that relate to them a little bit more. So I would suggest, if you want to introduce your kids to comics, you want to get your kids interested in the medium, that you let them check out what you have. And if you have stuff that's more adult, don't show them that, but show them the stuff that is cool for their age and, appropriate for them. My kids love the Avengers movies and that kind of stuff, so I let them see some of the like 1960s and 70s Avengers stuff. I let them see some 80s Avengers stuff. Like I let them look at my collection, and some of the stuff that's a little bit more precious, I don't let them handle too much. But I don't really treat my comics like pieces of gold. I really like let my kids look at it, hold it, feel it, smell it. I feel like that is a big thing. Um, so that's one aspect of it. Let them see your collection. The other thing is let them go to a comic show with you, and that is not always the most fun thing, but take them to a comic show, let them go to a dealer table and look through the dollar bin or the 50-cent bin. It's amazing what excitement that can draw from a kid when they see a 50-cent bin full of comics. Um, Mostly because if a kid brings $5, or if you tell the kid they've got $5 to spend, or $10 to spend, or however much you think, kids that are 8, 9, 10 years old that really understand money real well, and how much they can spend. Like when you can come out with a full stack of comics, um, that's a pretty big deal. Even for adults, that's a big deal. So definitely it's a big deal for kids, and they're gonna have a lot more options to pick what they want. Now you're gonna have to watch them, because in every 50-cent or dollar bin, there's stuff that's inappropriate for kids. So this needs to be a together thing. You can't make this just about letting the kid just do whatever they want. You really need to watch what they're getting, because every dealer has 50-cent dollar bins at shows, but then they'll throw whatever they want in there, and it's usually haphazardly. It's usually not in alphabetical order too well. It's always kind of messed up after people start going through it. So there's going to be stuff in there that's definitely geared more toward adults, and you want to watch and be careful. You might just do it with them, and if they slip up and find a book that has like kind of a nasty cover or some content inside of it that you don't want them to see, just pull it out of their hand and be like, "Yep, that one's for adults, not for you. Let's keep looking." And eventually, you'll land on something that is super cool that they love. So, uh, give them something they can afford. That's one thing. Like make it a 50-cent dollar bin deal at a comic show. Let them spend their own money on that. That's a big thing too. Like I can remember how it felt to go into in my time. It was a drugstore, and there was a spinner rack, and at that time the comics were less than $1. So I knew what it was like to go in with a couple bucks and come out with, two comics and a candy bar. It was a cool thing. So affordability is one big aspect, and that's one of the reasons why kids today are not getting into comics, because if they go to the local comic shop and they want to buy a brand new comic because they saw a movie, you're looking at $5 for a comic. That's a lot of money for a kid to spend on one thing, especially a 22 pager. So, the comic book industry is really missing in a major way. They are missing the kids market. First of all, comics need to be in normal stores like Walmart, grocery stores, spinner racks, magazines. You need to see comics in these places so kids have access to them. But even if you go to the comic book shop and your kid wants to buy a comic, they can't afford a $5 comic, too well. If your kid lives in an area where they can literally ride their bike to the comic shop, or like they just have a normal access to the store like that, it's really difficult to get them in there and get them out with any substantial amount of entertainment. To them, it doesn't make sense, because they can sit down and watch a Netflix show for 30 minutes and, what they perceive as almost a free service. But if you go into a comic shop and you come out with a 22-page story, it's got to be, it's just not worth it. And so therefore they lose interest. They can get a pack of Pokemon cards and they can go play with their friends. It's hours and hours of entertainment. So today, getting kids into comics is more about stepping back in time with them and showing them things that are really timeless and beautiful. 80s comics are my go-to. You can find good 80s comics, Marvel and DC 80s comics, in every dollar bin. So when I see that, I will almost always pick up some for the kids if I'm at a show. or if I'm at the local comic shop and they're with me, I'll let them dig through the dollar bins and show me what they got. I'll look over their shoulder, make sure what they're checking out. I'll put them in the right section. Like, hey, this is a good section right here. There's some gold in here. You need to check it out. It's fun. It's really fun. So those are some ways that you can get your kids into comics. Make it something that they find valuable. Do it together. You know, let them see your passion for it. Let them see why you like it. Talk to them about why Green Lantern is cool to you. Talk to them about why Wolverine is neat. Like let them know how you felt about it as a kid. Share this with them. They will love it. Kids love comics still to this day. It's a timeless art form. It is a timeless way to tell stories. People have been telling stories with words and pictures since the caves, right? Since Egypt, right? So it's an amazing thing that still translates today. People that say kids don't like comics now because they've got other things are not doing it right. Kids need to take a break from TV every once in a while. They need to get off the screens. They need to hold an old comic book in their hand and smell the ink and flip through the pages and check it out. Like they need that. It's good for them. It's good for them to take a break. A lot of kids won't sit down and read a book. They just won't. Like they'd rather go to it on YouTube and listen to it or something, and or get it on audiobooks or something. But it's hard to get kids to sit down and read. Comics is still a major and viable way to get kids to read. Kids love to read comics. So I just want to encourage everybody, like, don't give up on kids and comics. I think it can really be depressing when you think about like how comic sales are going. Kids don't seem to be into it as much as they used to. It's just because they have so much, all these shows, they've got all this entertainment, all these video games, like, constant sources of social media. I'm telling you guys, comics are still viable. Comics can have just as big of an impact today as they ever have. But we as creators, those of you who follow me that create your own stuff, you got to think through the process of creating comics for kids. And I'll talk about that later, because right now the comic I'm doing is not necessarily geared for kids. Hero Blooded Patriots is going to be geared for more of a PG-13 audience. And that's a great audience. It's still a good, viable thing for older kids, They can read these kinds of comics and enjoy them still. But we got to get younger kids into comics, folks. It's still a great, great industry. So that's all I need to say about that. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed a little bit of the video of me inking while I was talking about this. Again, you can check me out on Twitter at Mutt-Man75 or Instagram at Mutt-Man Comics. I share the process of making comics, and follow along. Thanks a lot. Bye. Oh, and make sure you hit the like button and please subscribe. I plan to do a lot more content like this about creating comics and how we can feed the comic industry some good ideas, by people that create content. So please do subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and we will talk to you real soon. Later.